Hello, and welcome back to Watching Brief for the month of November 2020. I am joined, as ever, by my excellent co-host, Mr. Andy Brockman. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning from southeast London, which is blanketed in freezing fog, which just about matches the national mood at the moment. But hey,
Uh,
who am I
you,
to?
you say that, but up here it's quite pleasant actually. I've just had a nice brisk morning walk, and following a proper 7 hours sleep for the first time in several days. So,
Well, well,
so
that's good to hear. That's good
Indeed.
to hear.
So, fortunate me. But yes, as you say, the national mood is puckering up, shall we say, as we approach the end of the year. I will no doubt mention that as the watching brief goes on this month. Um,
The swear box is ready and primed.
and this month we are continuing our ongoing mission to discuss the archaeological news of the moment and present it here for you to comment on and add to below. And we're going to start this month's watching brief um, with a series of lovely links, a selection of links, which we wanted to bring to your attention, but couldn't quite fit into other segments. So very quickly, just get a quick rundown of what these are. Check them out; they're well worth looking at. First of all, ArchaeoBalt, the bolt as in the Baltic, not as in nuts and bolts, towards innovative green and blue tourism. Essentially, a conference, a digital conference that the lovely Leave Westring, our friend and colleague, was invited to take part in November, is available on their YouTube channel. A series of presentations, roundtable discussions, this kind of thing. And I didn't have time to engage with it in the moment. I was busy. An interesting month for me. We won't go into that into too much detail, but it's also broken up into a series of videos that are on particularly on the the video uploads stream on the YouTube channel. So I've very specifically linked to that in the link below. And it's interesting. There's this sort of combination, I suppose, between tourism, um, uh, green concerns and environmental considerations, and archaeology. And so lots of international collaboration there. What's your
I'm saying
takeaway?
nothing. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything. Fish.
Blue passports. Yeah, lots of international cooperation there, and also Leave was very pleased to have been invited to take part. So definitely check that out if you're interested. The second link of this batch is headlined by Memoryland, free historic picture archive just got bigger and better. This is an archive of imagery and associated information. Um, it's basically a bit of a social history gold mine, really. And this particular article, which is highlighting the relaunch of Memory Lane, is fronted by Professor Kate Williams, a prominent journalist, broadcaster,
And academic.
historian, academic, who often turns up on, for example, BBC documentaries. And also, I think she's one of the people who's brought in during like royal weddings, isn't she? And
Yeah.
coronations, this kind of, well, no, we haven't had a coronation, but you know what I mean. She will be if there is a coronation. Yeah. So she's fronting that, and it's an interesting resource. We thought we'd point you towards it. And then third,
Worth pointing out, actually, just worth pointing out very quickly that
yep,
resources like that are increasingly important and useful, I think, because, well, the commercial picture libraries are often exorbitantly expensive if you
mm,
try and license images from them.
yep,
And as Dr. Bendor Grosvenor has been campaigning about in the last year or so, even our public museums like the National Galleries and British Museum and so on tend to charge for their imagery, which it's argued, given that they're paid for by their upkeep is paid for largely by taxpayers' money, is a little bit iffy. But in fact, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport and the current Secretary of State Oliver Dowden has said that museums should look to monetize more of their assets, which includes archives. So watch this space on all this.
and we'll be returning to Mr. Dowden in due course as well. But
Don't
interest,
make a drama out of a crisis. Come on.
but also actually it's interesting, yeah, because even for example, locally there are some local library archives, council essentially council archives, where sometimes they will be bequeathed someone's photographic collection, and I've definitely come up against this a few times in recent years, where you know that they have the perfect photo to illustrate something for your research purposes, and even for research purposes, you have to buy a license, and that license is often prohibitive if you are working on your own or for a small project. It's a bit
I don't
frustrating.
use our local archive for that precise
Yeah,
reason. So, in fact, by trying to charge ridiculous amounts of money for it, they actually lose money.
I think so. I think so. And they certainly lose, as it were, and I hate this word in other contexts, but they lose the exposure of the resource as well, as it were. Fewer people know that it exists because no one's using it. Um,
Yeah.
the third link that we're highlighting in this segment it's not so much a resource, but it's a lovely link, which is it's a nice little bit of a thought bubble news article, and it is on phys.org, teaching and complex tools evolve together, and this is the the feedback loop between making complex items, having to learn how to make those complex items, and in that process, I suppose, also knowing how to pass on that knowledge, and this growing together over time. It's an interesting one. They actually have here, for example, there's an exercise involving pipe cleaners and trying to make a tool to carry marbles. This is one of the illustrative experiments in the article. And this is something which is touched on, for example, Stephen Mython did Prehistory of the Mind many years ago now, um, well, several years ago now at least, where he talked about how there was obviously he envisaged the cathedral mind, new bits of the cathedral being bolted on as new social and technological demands were being made of it.
It's
Uh,
interesting as well
mm,
that this all ties in with the recent research on, for example, Neanderthals, which we've been reading, our hominid cousins, in fact, relatives, as we now
mm,
know from DNA research. But whether the Neanderthals were capable of the same kind of abstract thought and creative and artistic thought as Homo erectus, as Homo sapiens were supposed to be.
mm.
That was, that. Whether there was that difference in intellectual capability, I have to say actually, it's an ongoing process, because comparing your work and tools and your shed and your attempts at DIY and mine, I'm still at the simple tools and concept stage and not doing particularly well at that. So
Yeah, I've definitely been inspired by watching a few years now of Adam Savage to have a beautiful little workspace, which I do enjoy a lot. So, but yes, as you say, that
yeah,
is interesting. Also, that feedback, that's even evidence, isn't it? Is it
mm,
not? In a very serious way, in how we
mm,
relate to our own tools and how on our workspaces. So,
yeah,
you in getting a new capability, you start to think about a project in a completely different way, and also vice versa.
yeah,
You cannot think about uh, how to say actually construct a box in a more elegant way if you don't have access to things like pocket holes and glues and the right screws and
yeah,
so on and so forth. Whereas if all you have is a hammer and a nail, everything looks like a
mm,
hammer and nail job. So again, this relationship, it's current even when it comes to personal tool collections, isn't it? I think.
very much so.
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
that was a very clever analogy, Andy. Well done. I like that. I don't mean that in a patronising way. I loved that. Um, anyway, those are the three links we wanted to highlight in this little segment. Three lovely links to check out, and
Yeah.
we couldn't quite squeeze them in elsewhere.